My name is Erin Lindauer, and you're listening to A Life Without Struggle. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 wonderful children, a 2-time best-selling author, and a highly driven and successful entrepreneur. In my 17-plus year career as a mindset and health expert, I know what holds women back from a life you only dream about. Whether you're a CEO, a businesswoman, or executive, I started this podcast because I have been where you are, and I know you want and deserve more out of your life. I believe women are limitless. We just get lost along the way. The process to get you there is the topic and purpose of this podcast. When you understand what you want, you can truly step into a life without struggle. Welcome, and I'm so thankful you're here. Welcome back to another episode of Life Without Struggle. My name is Erin Lindauer, and today we're going to speak into a topic that I did back on episode 26, but I want to give some more perspective and some more ideas around this topic. And the reason I even came to this topic was Facebook has, a feature where you can see your memories and what you've posted on subsequent years. And I always look at them because it's always interesting to me to see, first off, the kids younger and as babies. And, man, those years just literally flew by. Just different things that we were doing, different trips that we've been on. And a memory popped up, and normally it's just happy, right? We always post all the happy stuff and the highlight reel of our lives. And so I was looking back at my memories, and it was a picture of Tony and I with Leo. Leo was it's probably 9 months old. And I don't know, it sent me swirling back to a difficult time of my life. And, where I took the photo, right, because it was Easter, we were at church, and we were, dressed up, and took the picture and said, Happy Easter. And oh man, I just instantly went back girl, that smile was fake. I remember just feeling so not me, just uncomfortable in my own skin and fragile and scared. And anyways, I'm not going to go into all of that right here in the intro, but when I saw the picture, normally I'm oh, how cute, look how little the kids are. Or I'll text it to Tony and be remember this? And, this one just stopped me for a second. And I was even though this picture is the picture perfect, husband and wife, smiling, little baby, and, everybody's dressed up, you're at church, and I just remember the hell that I was in. And so it brought me back to a place, and I was I need to write some of this stuff out because I've come so far. I've come so far in this journey, and where, yes, seeing that picture definitely stopped me in my tracks, more so than I thought it was going to. But I also just had some time to reflect this week, and I wanted to share that here in this podcast because I think it can be very helpful, very meaningful, and just some good insights on things that we may not even be aware of in ourselves. I know I certainly was. So today's topic and name of this podcast is We Create Our Personal Prison. That is the exact words, the exact feeling that I had when I was in that moment, that time and space. I felt that I was in prison, that I couldn't do anything. I had this baby now, and oh my gosh, this is hard, right? And don't get me wrong, Leo was easiest baby ever. Dude slept through the night. He was amazing. Ate, never fuss. He was just so easy. And then you have your second child and you're oh my God, that was a tease. But I digress. But what was going on, and this is where I want to share it. I'm just going to share this super high level. I believe in a lot of my previous podcasts, or if you've been following me for a while, you've heard a lot of my background and just the struggles. And really why I created this podcast was out of my own struggle. And I truly want to help other women have, maybe it's just simply awareness, right? Just awareness to, hey, you're not alone. Like, you are not the only one that feels this way. But one thing that I know I've done and a lot of other women do is we don't talk about it. I never shared how hard I was struggling until I was good. And here's the deal, like, some people don't ever get out of this struggle. And so what was going on in my world was we had chosen to start having a family, and I had the most uneventful pregnancy. Everything was easy. It was great. I was deadlifting 200, back squatting 135, literally days before going into labor. And I had the absolute, in my eyes, worst birth you could ever have. It was a 55-hour labor. He almost died. I almost died. I got an infection. I got a secondary infection, went back in the hospital. He was in a NICU unit. He was born not breathing. It felt so surreal. And there was so much trauma. I did a ton of therapy. I did EMDR treatments, and those were fantastic for the PTSD that I now no longer have, thank the Lord. And I just remember becoming a mom, and I was in such an interesting space because I wanted to be home with Leo, but then I also wanted to work, and I could not find the balance. I remember searching high and low for a daycare because literally all of our friends put their kiddos in daycare. And I really just thought that's what you do. I mean, I was in daycare, and I just thought that's what you do. And I just didn't really even consider, honestly, in that time and space, where our business was at, I didn't need to be there 24/7, and I could still do things even though I was home. But that to me didn't feel right. And so, looking back on it, I can definitely see that I could have created a little bit better of a balance, and I could have been okay with it. But you don't know what you don't know until you've lived it, right? And so I share a lot of this because I think there's other type A women running businesses, trying to do it all. And it was okay in that time and space for me to prune my vine. That was something that was extremely helpful, that a therapist that I went to for quite some time, she was extremely helpful with saying, hey girl, you need to prune your vine. Because when you prune that vine, new growth can occur. And she was 100% right. The second I stopped serving on all of my boards, I stopped going to all of my networking, I stopped basically doing all the things that I had done for so many years and had created, so much rapport that I was fine. It was fine. And the cool thing is I was able to jump back in those things, and it was like I didn't even miss a beat. So again, hindsight's always 20/20. But I remember putting Leo in daycare. And so I remember he was 9 weeks old. And I mean, I was struggling. I had toured the facility. I had paid the money. My God, that was a lot of money. I mean, I had done all the research. This is where all the doctors and nurses, this is where some of our clients sent their babies, and had them all the way up to, I believe they did like a preschool program. And it was great, right? Like, everything was great. But I remember that very, very first day, I walked in the infant room. You had to remove your shoes. And I walked in and I was like, where do I put him? And the lady looked at me and said, oh, just lay him on the boppy on the floor. And I was like, huh? Come again? Really? And I didn't know what to do because I couldn't do it. Like, I just was standing there. And then I think they could tell because tears were welling up in my eyes, and they start to well up right now anyways. And I just remember that, like, you didn't need to do that. That wasn't something you had to do. And you should trust your mama instincts. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Subsequently, one of the other ladies came and took him because I physically couldn't lay my babe on the floor and walk out. And so I remember I'm so sorry, I did not think I was going to have this response, but I'm an emotional person, if you guys can't tell. But I remember that time just being so freaking hard. And I remember that, I kept questioning if we were doing the right thing, taking him to daycare. And I remember just getting sick. Oh my God. I had no idea how many just viruses you were going to pick up, and everybody calling it normal, and that your babe is building up their immunity, all these things. And I was just like, man, everybody does this, Erin. It's okay. This is normal. But I had no idea that for every cold that your kid gets, you get it too. And that was news to me because I hadn't been sick, and I couldn't even remember. And so there was one time that we had strep throat. And I said to Tony, my husband, I said, we're done. We're done. We just got off of having double ear infections. Now we have strep throat. All of us have strep throat. I said, we can't keep doing this. We cannot keep getting sick like this. This is not normal. And I had this instinct inside of me that was like, to stop daycare and find a better solution. And so I was hell-bent. I told Tony, I'm just going to stay home. I'm going to figure this out. And I should have trusted my gut. I should have trusted my gut because I took Leo back. And, this was after months now. So this is months, and I forget how old he was at this moment, but it was in this time and space of me really going downhill. And it's around this time because I can remember it. And I remember going to pick up Leo one evening, and I went to go pick him up, and the second he saw me, he started fussing, like just crying. And that's just not him. He never was that baby ever. And I was like, oh, bud, what's wrong? And I was trying to soothe him. He was definitely a pacifier kid, and tried to give him his passy. He wouldn't take his passy. And I'm like, gosh, that's strange. Well, then he wouldn't stop crying. I got him home and was trying to soothe him, trying to feed him. He wouldn't soothe. And, by this point, I'm getting frustrated. So I put him back in the car seat. I thought, maybe if I just drive him around, maybe he'll calm down with the car. And I drove to the gym. And I said to Tony, I said, hey, I'm coming over. I want you to see if you can do something to help him. He just won't settle. And so by this point, Tony was like, hey, I'm wrapping up anyways. I'm going to head home. And so he came home, and I had tried everything to soothe this kiddo, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And it got the best of me. And I finally said to Tony, I said, I think there's something in his mouth. And so long story short, I had the flashlight on my phone, and I was shining it in his mouth, and I was having Tony hold his mouth open, which was, not going over very well. And I saw something, and I knew. I was like, there's something in his throat. And so I started finger swiping and just gently trying to pull what it was. And I wish I was kidding, but I pulled out a command strip wrapper out of his throat. It was closing off his airway, and he was choking. That's basically what was happening, was he was choking. And this, after having the birth be so terrible, and getting, the help and the therapy, and becoming a mom, and really struggling with, where do I fit in this world now? I want to be this mom, but I want to be this businesswoman. And then this happens. And it happens exactly the day after I told Tony we're not taking him back. And Tony said, we've already paid, take him back. We'll figure this out. And it just shattered me. It shattered me because I wasn't trusting myself. I wasn't trusting my instincts. I wasn't sticking to my guns. And I wasn't saying, no, we're doing it this way. And so it sent me down a really, really dark path. And so here's why I share all those things. I don't want you to feel bad for me. I don't want you to be like, oh my God. I want you to understand that we all have a story. We all have things that we have experienced. This isn't tick for tack. This isn't my story's worse than your story. We all have a story. And in my world, this was some of the most devastating stuff I had ever experienced. I've had a pretty easy peasy. Things have been fine, pretty textbook, if you ask me, kind of way of life. Had a great childhood, had great parents, had, great high school, college, athletics, sports, like scholastics, everything. Like everything's been pretty flippin' easy. And like this just was devastating to me. And I remember that time and space in my eyes. I remember looking in the mirror and it almost was like I like couldn't even see myself. And I know that feeling when it's like, I don't even know who that woman is. My soul was gone. I had been stripped. Everything that I knew was right. Everything that I knew was wrong. I couldn't tell you which end was up. And I could tell you I probably had lost a lot of sleep. So, and self-induced because the baby slept. So there's that. But I share all this because can create our prison. All I had to do was understand objectively, like, girl, stuff sucks. Like what you're going through is not cool. It is not cool. But you know what? It's okay. And you're going to be okay. And you've got to trust yourself and guide yourself through the storm. And you don't have to walk this alone. See, you have a version of this story in you. Fortunately and unfortunately, stuff has gone sideways in your life. And I know that. And so what I want you to understand is, are you letting it take over you? Are you letting it dictate? I remember my therapist saying to me, you are clinically depressed. You need to take medicine. And I was so reluctant. I didn't want to. I didn't want to give up control. I didn't want to feel fuzzy. And here's the deal, no shame in the game. I did take her up on it finally, and it did help me get through a hump. I'm thankful, but not thankful, but I had to go off of it because I had such in my ears. But thankfully, by that point, I was on the up and up. So no shame in the game. You got to do what you got to do through certain periods of time. And, I was reluctant, but I'm thankful that I moved through that. But I want to fast forward to some training that was just imperative. It was some of the best decision my husband and I have ever made that we invested in, and it completely removed these thoughts of I'm a depressed person. I'm anxious. I have anxiety. And he shared with us how depression is a choice. And I was so taken back. I'm like, you don't know my story. You don't know what I've been through. And I got so defensive. I was just completely like hit by this. But what I started to understand with some deep conversations and going back through my timeline, going back to his birth, going back to these most devastating times in my life, and remove the emotions. And remembering that just seconds before these events, I was good. I was okay, right? And I realized in that moment, I can choose the outcome. And it was extremely empowering to me, because the worst thing that we do, sit in this space our entire life, in this woe is me, stuff always happens to me, everything's wrong, I have this, I have that, this circumstance, this isn't going right. And I think about it, and so many people would be like, yeah, listen, she had this, and this go on. Of course, yeah, I can get it. And all of us could step back in our lives and go, yeah, I get why, you don't feel good. I get why you have anxiety. I get why you feel so depressed all the time. But I want to empower you that as quickly as you can decide that you feel a certain way, you can decide to feel opposite. Now, I'm not going to say don't use therapy. I'm not going to say don't use medication if that's appropriate between you and your medical provider. But I also want to empower you with the choice to understand, hey, I'm in this space. This space sucks. It really sucks because it impacts everything. It impacts how we eat. It impacts how we dress, how we feel. And for most of us in these dark times in our life, we can look back and say, dang, I did not take care of myself. I was not who I wanted to be. I did not love that woman in the mirror. And the second we decide that, hey, I don't want to struggle anymore, because I do remember that. There was a time and space when I literally looked at my therapist and I looked at her and I said, you know what? I'm not going to struggle anymore. She just kind of was taken back. And see, I was the person when she told me to color my emotions, I got out a black crayon and just colored the whole page black. And she was like, goodness. And I was like, well, that's how I feel. This kind of sucks. And she was like, okay, so all black. I'm like, yep, all black. That's how we feel right now. And she told me a couple times, she's like, I didn't know if we were making progress, if you should be hospitalized. And I said, well, put it this way. I said, we came a long way. But I said to her one day, I said, you know what? I don't want to struggle anymore. I don't want to struggle anymore. And I said, I'm going to start focusing on what I want. I had no clue what I was actually doing in my unconscious mind. I didn't actually know what I was putting forth in effort to not struggle anymore. And so what I learned here with some more mental programming and understanding these emotions and not allowing these emotions to control me, I learned that when I started focusing on what I actually wanted, I wasn't depressed anymore. I wasn't anxious anymore. Anxiety is 100% not knowing what you want. It's a terrible space to be in. If you've ever seen a kid walking up and down the aisles at Target and you gave them free reign, right? Like, here, pick out a toy. Oh my God. I watch Livia just fret back and forth. Is she going to make the right decision? And I'm like, holy moly, this backfired, right? And so I want you to understand that as soon as you understand, dang, I don't want to be in this space anymore. That's truly the everything spot. You make this decision with your weight, you make this decision with how you feel, you make this decision with your health, and you say, I don't want to feel like this anymore. And then here's what I'm going to pose back to you. What do you want instead? Because you can give me a laundry list of all the things you don't want. I get to have a conversation all day long about what people don't want. We're really good at telling us what we don't want, but we are terrible about putting together what it is that we actually desire, that we actually want. And here's the other interesting thing about it. Sometimes we don't believe that it can happen, or that we deserve it, or that we can do it. How many times have you gone down a weight loss journey just to put it all back on? I get it. But I want you to consider that if I started focusing on what I want to feel good in my own skin. I want all the things in my closet to fit. I want to draw the line in the sand. Start becoming this new version of you. You've heard me say this 100 times if you've been listening in long enough. And you start truly embodying, I am this person. And that's what it's going to take. For me, I had to go through the ups and downs. I'm so thankful that I didn't get too low without getting help. I'm thankful that I continued to work on this. I'm thankful that at the trainings, I partnered up with a woman and she and I went out into the hallway of this conference room. And I mean, she just let me cry my eyes out. And she was pretty pregnant. And I don't know, I think we just connected and I just had her take me through what was called timeline therapy. And it was one of the most empowering, exciting, frustrating processes But then once it was done, I can't even tell you, I felt like the whole world had been lifted off my shoulders. That all the things of his birth, like, was gone. And that I didn't have to carry that as the burden. Or, well, Erin struggles because, she had a bad birth, right? I mean, a lot of women have really bad births. We just don't talk about it, right? And so I just felt so free when I could go back and hover above where I was in that labor and delivery room and being so scared out of my mind. And I was able to remove the fear, the anxiety, the scared. And I truly saw faith, that I had faith in God. I had faith in myself. I had faith in Leo. And I didn't even know that that's what we were going to name him. We named him Leo Ari, and Ari stands for courageous, lion, Leo, lion. And I just, it was just, when you really look back at it, you're like, dang, that was amazing. And the hospital staff and everyone that took him, they got him breathing right away. I mean, there were so many miracles that were happening, yet all I focused on was all the terrible things that were going on, right? I remember going back into the hospital with a secondary infection. We literally had just gotten home from the NIC unit. I felt like I had been in the hospital for months, and because we had a NIC unit stay after. And long story short, I remember going back to the hospital. I was in ER. I was literally on all fours because I could not get a comfortable position. I was screaming because I was in so much pain. What I didn't know that was happening is my uterus was completely just filled with infection. I kept saying, God, I feel like my uterus is going to fall out. Is this normal? Are you still supposed to be bleeding? I didn't know. And so then I remember them telling me, hey, you have so much infection. It's going sepsis, I think is how it's said. And it's touching your appendix. And that's why you're in the pain that you're in, because it's like you're having an appendicitis. And I remember the surgeon saying, hey, we're going to take you into emergency surgery. We'll be removing your appendix. We will be removing your uterus, and we need to get you going. And I was like, no, you're not. I was like, no, you're not. And he just looked at me, and I said, I want a second opinion. I was like, I'm not just having one baby. That was not my plan. And he was like, well, I mean, we can get another doctor. And I mean, you should have seen these guys scrambling. I said, no, we're not doing that. There has to be another option. And lo and behold, they called one of the senior, I forget his full title, but they called him up and they said, hey, what do you think we can do in this scenario? And he just suggested that, hey, why don't we put her on some high antibiotics, monitor her overnight, and see how her white count responds. And lo and behold, my white count responded extremely well. The infection cleared. I mean, everything just got better, right? And right there is proof that I can trust myself, that I know what's right for my body, okay? And it's okay to advocate and say, hey, is there another way? So I want to empower you to understand that we've all had these experiences that really check us. They really throw us for a loop. Don't let that define you. Don't let it be the reason you can't take care of yourself. Take a moment to step back. I highly recommend working through this with a professional. And it's important to be aware that you are creating the personal prison on a daily basis. You're the one that creates every feeling, every emotion. It's very interesting raising kids, and, I forget what it was, but one of them said something about, you're making me angry. And I was like, no, actually, you're making yourself angry. I'm like, I'm doing this. That does not make you feel any emotion outside of your control. And oh boy, that didn't go over well. But it's true. I can choose to be sad. I can choose to be happy. I can choose to be indifferent. I can choose to be joyous. I can choose to be at peace. I can choose to be in sorrow. So it doesn't mean that you never have an emotion. It doesn't mean that you never have a bad day. It doesn't mean that you don't have a good day. But what it means is that you take ownership of what you're feeling. And you ask yourself, is this serving me? If it's not, cool. Let's figure out how to get past this so that you can focus on what you want. I was constantly living in this fear that Leo was going to die, that he was going to die, and I had to erase those thoughts. I had to remove those thoughts because they weren't true. I had no proof that they would be true. And instead, I focused on, I want a healthy babe. I want a happy babe. I want, a sibling for him. And, I kept focusing on the things that I wanted. I remember going into Livia's birth, going into her, just planning her and choosing to have her. And I was in such a good space. I had done so much work. I felt really, really good. And I remember hiring a doula for her birth. And I desired to have a water birth with her, which I got, and it was amazing. It was just the most beautiful. I went back to the hospital, which was so great because they had birthing tubs. And anyways, I had hired this doula, and she was like, wait a minute, you were like down in the dumps, depressed, to, okay, cool, we're having another baby. And I'm like, yes. And she just couldn't comprehend, but it was all good. She didn't have to. But that's the power of just some intentional focus, some intentional drive, and knowing what you want. With Livia's birth, I knew what I wanted. I knew that this was going to be different. I knew that there was no way in hell I could repeat what just happened. What are the odds, right? And so I knew that this would be different. And when I had her, I was like so euphoric. I mean, I literally was just sitting there in the recovery room, and I'm like, we're cool. I'm like, I can feel my legs. I can do everything. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is what it should be. So a lot of things happen that maybe we can't control. But a lot of things happen that we don't design. See, I want you to manufacture your coincidences. You ever feel like things are deja vu? You ever feel like, oh man, I was just thinking of that and then it happened? Tune into that. That is evidence and proof that when you know what you want and you pull yourself out of this personal prison of life sucks, this isn't fair, almost that victim mentality, if you don't mind me saying that, because we've got to understand, hey, can change really, really quickly. I see women all the time in my coaching program come in, they've been frustrated, they've been struggling their whole life trying to lose this weight. And what's interesting is when they come all in, they're open-minded, they're completely coachable. They take the feedback, they don't take offense to it. They ask lots and lots of questions, they get on their coaching calls, and it's one of the most beautiful processes that I get to watch. I get to watch her literally transform in front of my eyes. It takes having awareness that, man, I don't want to be like this anymore. Okay, cool. Then what do you want instead? And then I highly, highly recommend having a coach, having someone who's going to support you through the process. Because if you feel like you're struggling, and you feel like you're going at this alone, you've been trying all these things to lose weight and nothing is working, then it's a problem, okay? And there's something that you're not keenly aware of. Most women have no clue how much how little they move their body until I start working with them. And I know that's not sexy. I know that's not exciting. But the second we get nutrition dialed in, eating reasonably well, focusing on protein initially, and then getting really good sleep, not killing ourselves in a HIIT workout or Orange Theory workout. We just nourish our body well, sleep, drink water, and move. It's amazing how quickly weight comes right off. There is a process that you have to go through. You have to be clear on what it is that you want. You have to believe that you are her. Okay? You have to start seeing her. Sometimes you don't believe that it's possible. I got you. This is where you have to borrow my belief. Borrow my belief because I know you can do that goal and so much more. So I'm really good at like stretching people like, yes, cool, you can hit this goal. That's awesome. But what else do you want? So anyways, I hope this comes at a good time in your life. I hope this message hits you personally the way it needs to hit you. I hope it's a shake. If you needed a shake, that's what I felt when I went through the training that I went through. I felt like someone just finally woke me up. I felt like someone just shook me and was like, hey, get this out of you. You don't need to struggle anymore. And it was the most freeing space when I just realized that like, hey, life is pretty good. And if I want it to be better, cool. I get to make it better. Is it going to be hard? Are you going to struggle? Sure, like a little, but we get to choose our heart, okay? There's always an option. I was downloading an app just a second ago for the kids. There was some game that somebody said they wanted to play, and it wasn't working. And so, of course, you know, when you're tired, it's after school, it's the end of the world, you start crying. And then the other child was like, stop crying, we're trying to figure it out. And it was so interesting because I could see the frustration. And even myself, I was like, hey guys, I'm just not aware of this app. I'm not quite sure. Let's keep trying. What else can we do? And then it was just so funny because Leo was like, let's delete it and redo it again and see if that works. And then boom, it literally worked. And I said, see, bud, see, like, gotta think, is there another option? And then he turns around and tells Liv, yeah, Liv, you don't have to cry about it. You can find another way. And I was like, oh boy, but all good. So I want you to really get focused in on, am I living in a personal prison? Have I created this crappy, like, not so good life that I'm not proud of? I don't like being in this space. And then it's time to make a decision. Am I just going to hang here because you could, really could? And I watch a lot of people day in and day out just struggle. Everything's wrong. Traffic's always bad. There's always, you know, this or that going on. And I see other people that are just flourishing and they're having a good time and going on vacations, feeling really good in their own skin. They're asking like, what else can I do? They hike mountains. They do fun, adventurous things. They're active with their kids. I don't know. It's just really cool when you can see someone get on the other side. So I want to share with you that it is possible. Sometimes you got to have the right coach. You got to have the right person to help you through. Because here's what happens when you're growing and you're changing, you're going to hit resistance. Resistance is a good thing. For a lot of us, we don't like to change our habits. We've been doing the same darn thing for so long that refuse to make changes because it goes up against our values. And so what you want to think about is, am I open to change? Am I being completely transparent and open with myself that I do need to do things differently? And you know what? Just because I've always done it this way doesn't mean that's the only way. So let's get out of that prison. Okay? Do it. And I'm here to help. So should you feel that you're ready for a coach, all you got to do is reach out to me. You can hit me up on any social media. I want you to share this podcast. The more you share this podcast and get it out to other women, the more women we can impact. And even if it's just a listen in, that's great. But consider having someone hold your hand through this process. It's all good. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have those impactful people in my life. All right, I want you to go get them. Got this.